Oh, hello. Okay. Cool. I am ready to begin. So just give me the... Oh, give a countdown. Okay, so I'm live. Great. Cool. So, yeah, this is Jak II. We sort of gave a rundown of this, so I'm excited to get this started here. What I'm going to do here, which is right out the gate unconventional for PB attempts, is I'm going to be running from a memory card, and that's just a safety measure to prevent if the game were to crash, hypothetically, I can go ahead and just restart from the last save. Doesn't waste that much time, and then if you don't crash, you only lose about 15 seconds to saving and stuff, so it's more or less trivial, so it's totally fine. We can go ahead and just do a countdown when I hit yes here. There's a bit of a countdown that we use when we do runs for about 3 seconds, but it's totally, it's a, minute difference. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. Thank you, everyone. Wishing me luck in the chat. So right at the gate, we're going to skip a cutscene. We're going to skip every cutscene, more or less. We will see these prompts occasionally for the saving, but that's totally fine. And then this is going to be the escape sequence, which is the most heavy, like parkour-based section. We don't have any equipment right now. We just have been rescued by Daxter from the Baron's prison here to give some narrative context, which I'll do my best to provide. Just a lot of really scripted movement, some RNG here and there, like this platform cycle can vary. I got a really lucky one though. Depending on the direction it's moving, that trick that I just did called a boosted can actually work differently. Nice thing about the tech in all three games is that they kind of have a similar physics, so tricks that came from Jak I are all applicable in terms of movement, so things like boosted and extended uppercuts. It translates fairly well between all the games. So that was a fairly... I was happy with that escape. It was, nothing went wrong. A lot of good luck there. That's what it looks like. Optimally, it can be under a minute. Usually just around there. Another cutscene, which we're going to go ahead and skip here. I'm going to be mindful to not really skip cutscenes too quick because I don't know exactly to what degree this does influence it, but sometimes if you overload the game with inputs right when cutscenes begin, that's an opportunity for it to crash. So we're going to play it a little safe here. This is the only time we get to see Jak, unfortunately. He's really cool, can one-shot guards pretty much. Well, that's all he two-shots him, but his movement's super fast. He can chain all those hits together. It's very cool. In other categories, we do get to exploit his tricks a little more. In this one, though, we barely have very few missions we actually have to complete. We only do about 2/3 of or 1/3 of the game, as I mentioned with Pokehero. Specifically, all of the major ones are literally happening within the first 4 minutes, so we're going to see the first trick here. We call these barrier skips, specifically red barrier skip, because of that. You see that red one right there. Area that we are supposed to discover casually far later. There's a gentleman named Mar who's sort of this big renowned hero of the Metalhead Wars, which are the main antagonists. He has a tomb that he's secretly buried in, which is supposedly secret, but we know how to access it early on in the game. It does require a zoomer again, so that's one of the big more random portions of the game, is how fast you can get these zoomers to spawn. That's what that looks like, just a well-timed jump over that, and we are now at the door to Mar's tomb. If you were to look at the menu, like the mission log, and see the percentage of completion at this point, it would tell us just about 60%, because the way the percentage works is it just looks at you know, what checkpoint you've hit, and says like, well, logically this checkpoint can be reached at this stage. So we're going to update both your story percentage and your inventory to reflect what checkpoint you just hit. So it's okay. Trying to do some like really swag water roll jumps there. The inputs are a little finicky, but yeah, so we're just gonna continue. We actually aren't equipped just yet with all the best tools for speedrunning, so we're gonna rely on a few more just simpler out of bounds tricks to sequence break the game. What I'm doing right now is once you enter Mars Tomb, the whole, it's kind of like a dungeon per se. You know, you have these things called tests of manhood, which are what you need to pass to really access the end of Mars Tomb. The whole goal here is that we're trying to reach the Precursor Stone, which is this really powerful gem that we can use to defeat the Baron, who's kind of the dictator of the city. He's trying to control it, trying to make sure, you know, just kind of rules in the iron fist, and that's not good. We work with the rebels. This is the only portion in the game when you actually get to use Daxter, and this is an interesting chase because the spider there is a degree of rubber banding that occurs. So the faster you go, the faster the spider travels. So you want to be optimal with this movement and kind of predict what's coming up. The one exception is that the second half, once we ascend these bouncing webs, the rubber banding kind of ends, and I'll go ahead and go fast just to show you like exactly what I mean, because if we do this part kind of, you know, with speed in mind, you'll see just how far back the spider really is because it doesn't follow you. It's kind of funny. And then you have a chance to kind of joke around a little bit. Trying to be careful with these punches. So you can kind of just run around here and do whatever. And so now we have all of the weapons we need. So we have the jet board and all of the guns. And the jet board is kind of the bread and butter of this run because we can do a rather game-breaking glitch called hovering, which looks like that. And we can exploit that to take us incredibly high in the air. I'm gonna play this rather safe. I'm not gonna do a side flip into this. And then we can do things like this, which other out of bounds, which were not very possible when we were just kind of, you know, without any fancy tools, are now pretty arbitrary. All walls are more or less broken. And time for a puzzle. Okay, that's 7 high. Great. So I have a paper stuck on my wall, which actually has a series of puzzle patterns, which I'm going to use to solve this, like basically a matching game. And what this is there's a set number. There's 6 set patterns. When we hear the melody, we know exactly which one we have, and we're gonna go ahead and just kind of follow the cheat sheet from there. We have 2 buttons we need to solve, which are kind of the, you know, the end points of each of the tests of manhood. Luckily, we can solve one sort of halfway, you know, the way we out of bounds it, and then the second one we can just hop on over and press it. Not a big deal. And you'll see me do these mission resets, which seem a little arbitrary, but what they're doing is that I'm changing my spawn point, and in this case, my spawn point shifted right to the boss fight of this area. And mission resetting is just faster than if we were to hypothetically travel there on foot or on board. This fight is in 3 phases, and that's the Baron. That's Baron Praxis, and he's trying to steal the Precursor Stone, and we're trying to be, you know, I guess we're trying to steal it too, but we're the good guys, and we don't want him to have it. You can hit him 5 times in each of these phases. Technically, you can hit him a ton of times, but you can consistently hit him 5 times. Ooh, I got a cycle skip. That's fantastic. That's a really good marathon luck. If you kill all the spiders before he finishes shooting, he won't even do a second phase. But watch his health here. Because I had 5 hits, it's going to jump right down to the halfway point because it does like carry over, which is really nice. Cool, I got 2 5 hits. From here, the last phase is a little more random. You have to rely on him to drop these bombs, which I'm hoping... Let's see if I can snag him here. Great. So this is looking good. shoots this bomb. Wow, this positioning is terrible. Okay, cool, that was a little scary, the way that bomb was, but this was a really good fight. That's kind of how you want it to look like. So you see he actually runs off with the precursor stone, so we have kind of failed. He's now got that as an advantage. As you can see, hovers just are kind of, you can optimize a lot of the movement with them just by, you know, things like skipping elevators. We don't need to wait here. We just ride all the way up. Not every elevator is convenient in that way. The majority of them are. And then something I haven't mentioned is that side flipping gives you an extra boost, and 2 side flips chained together gives you, you know, quote-unquote max speed, which is matches a zoomer speed being the fastest vehicle. And that's why, depending on how comfortable you are with the jet board, you are better eventually defaulting to just sticking to this rather than vehicles, because now you don't have to worry about factors like, you know, spawn, randomness, you don't have to worry about driving, which can be a little clunky, and then you can go ahead and do skips like this too. This is kind of the quote-unquote optimal way to move. That was Death Abuse, which we use regularly, and it's the same it's the exact same principle as reset warping. Changes your spawn point. Once we know our spawn point has changed when we cross certain lines in the game, we can go ahead and just either take a death or do a mission reset, depending on which one's faster. The thing with the world in this game is that it's all just surrounding a big void, you know, as a lot of games regularly are. And that's nice because we can go ahead, if we can access that void by, you know, hovering over walls, we can just, you know, kind of die. And you'll see intercity movement is a huge, ooh, I hit a pedestrian there, that was kind of funny. Intercity movement's a really big deal in this game. It's sort of like GTA, a lot of waypoints, so you'll see me jetboarding a lot. It's a huge part of like the optimization of this game, is just moving optimally. Let's see. This is a funny, this level is completely broken with the jetboard. Normally this level takes like about 1.5 minutes, but you can just hover kind of right to the end-ish, like that. That hover looks scary because it's like, you know, kind of blind, but it's just a matter of counting hovers and kind of getting a feel for it. Once you do it a ton of times, it's not that bad. That little clip is just a way to get to that room without having to wait for the door to open. So it looks cool. It actually only saves fractions of seconds, but yeah, it looks kind of funny. Coming up, you'll notice we're actually at a different part of the city. We took a portal over to this laboratory, so now we're in kind of the industrial district. Going over to the escort mission of the run, because every good run needs an escort mission. Sadly, we can't skip this. That being said, it's really cute. It's a really cute level. I like it. It's just kind of slow paced compared to the rest. As you'll see here, when you zoom into the elevator, it changes your spawn point to the bottom of it, so we'll go ahead and do another mission reset. And for whatever reason, this actually lets us skip having to talk to this intermediary guy that lets us go here. For some reason, if you just mission reset in the elevator, it just starts the escort mission. Here are our 3 favorite characters, Jinx, Mog, and then this other guy who I've never learned his name to this day. I couldn't remember his name at SGDQ, and I never bothered to learn it. So sorry to that guy. I'm triggering that text early because if you trigger it later on, kind of where you're supposed to, this ambush doesn't start until he finishes that sentence, so it just wastes a second or two. I'm really hoping that I can get really good spawns here. You'll notice that these 2 spawned on the other side. That's not very desirable. If I can get them all to spawn on this side, then I can go ahead and just spam them like this. In that scenario, I had to kind of do a little bit of movement. That area can vary by 3 or 4, or, you know, even more seconds, depending on how those spawn. I'm gonna tank a hit here, because if I kill these 2 spiders up this way fast enough, this scripted spawn of 2 other spiders in the back doesn't happen. Where you're supposed to be here and you think it's fine, and then Mog is like, they're coming in from behind, and you're like, you know, kind of throws you for a loop there. You can skip that, fortunately. Similarly, I'm going to be doing away with a lot of the scripted spawns, if I can. by doing things like that, just knowing where they are. Usually they're just hiding somewhere and you can kill them. In this case, I will have to give these a second because these two aren't pre-spawned, so I just have to wait for an audio cue. Similarly, I'm gonna wait for an audio cue here before moving on, and the reason for that is that these our escort dudes are actually on like a radius, and what that means is that we can't travel too far away from them or else the mission auto ends. And I think that's just, you know, to really give it that escort aspect. It's not fun if you can just travel all the way to the end. That does make it a little complicated. We want to make sure we can be as far out in this radius as we can just to do waveless stuff, which means that they don't have to ever stop. And that means knowing where these lines of, you know, mission ending are. This is the second ambush of this mission. Once he gets here, cutscene will start. And I'll be exploding the blue gun here just because its rate of fire is rather fast. It takes the same number of bullets to kill the spiders here, which is convenient. It's more optimal, it's very accurate. You can shoot from a long range. I will be micromanaging their health here because, and I'll be regularly rotating the camera, and the reason is because of like that. They spawn behind me, and they can actually deal quite a bit of damage while you're not paying attention to the, to your buddies there. Wow, I didn't use any yellow. That was a really good fight. Here again, I'm just gonna walk with them because the mission end radius is still there, so you can end the mission if you go over to the end here too quick. And you'll see here. So that's the escort mission. I'll be doing another reset warp here just because it puts me at the very start of the mission. Usually you can just immediately do it. That memory card symbol shows it was auto-saving, which we want for the marathon. It does cost a couple seconds per autosave. And I was a little excited that I didn't really use any of my yellow because this next section is going to be pretty reliant on your ammo count. For how optimal you can do it. It's just a very combat-based level. We're going to fight these three kind of large spider-like robots called bomb-bots. First, we have to stop by the rebel hideout, get a little mission update here, and then from there we'll make our way. This level is interesting. The robots do have a quick kill. Just to be safe, I'll grab these ammo crates anyways, even though I'm doing fairly well on ammo. The quick kill essentially is the fact that we're exploiting that these robots do not have very many iframes, if any at all. And we're gonna just wedge ourselves right in the middle of them and then do a bunch of spin jumps and shoots. And hopefully just do away with them in a matter of seconds. You expel about 30 bullets per robot. Like that. So it's super easy once you get the hang of it. You just kind of wedge yourself right in there. There's an exploit and kind of an oversight of the way that the guns are programmed where... One sec. It's rather hard to concentrate on these robots, which is funny. I've never really been good at multitasking with these guys. What was I saying? So, when you jump and spin with the yellow gun, and really the blue gun too, the rate of fire increases dramatically, which I think is just an oversight of the code, because there are like programmed combos, so to speak, where you can do like a punch and then a shoot, and when you hit a target it kind of rapid fires, but you can do that really anytime, and that really breaks the weapon and makes a lot of the fights a lot easier. And that's something we are exploiting in these fights because we are relying on that rate of fire. So that was that. That last one kind of bamboozled me a little bit. That camera angle is odd. This is one of the only portions, you'll see me hop on a zoomer again, and the reason for that is because there's one part of the city that is actually rather accommodating to the jet board, which is the canal district that we enter here, and that's because it's not a flat ground. There's a lot of like rivers, and jetboarding through them is rather difficult and kind of unwieldy. So we're just gonna do a zoomer here. Something I mentioned earlier when I was talking to PokeHero was that there's a lot of clips and just glitches in this game that are hilarious, and this is probably the funniest one, which is this absolutely free clip here. Because the way collision works on zoomers is they kind of soften the corners of the game, and what that does is some corners actually become entirely hollow when that happens. Specifically, that one. There are going to be 3 race sequences in the game, or in the run. This being the first one, and honestly, kind of the most difficult. You can get really tricked by these NPCs at the very start, like you can see. I'm being rather bullied here. Pretty tragic, but if I can say, wow, they're not having it today. Usually we can skip ahead from them at this point. Oh goodness! Wow, I'm getting the runaround here. Let me see if I can pull ahead of this guy here and snag a boost. Okay, so we're good now. They really kept up with me that whole first lap. We're gonna do these little shortcuts here. I opted out of the other one because I missed a boost and it was rather congested. Optimally, you can do this. You can do this race in about just under 2 minutes, maybe a minute 58 seconds. Is kind of like a really solid one for a run. Boost routing in this is pretty scripted. I'm gonna do boosts in the exact same spots every time. I'm gonna opt for like the safe skip here. There's a more advanced skip you can do there, but it's not risky per se, but a couple things that can go wrong with the setup, so I'm just gonna go ahead and not. It does save about a half second per skip, so over the course of 5 laps, if you do it, you actually save about 2.5 seconds from opting for the faster skip. The reason I usually don't do it in PB attempts on laps 1 and 5 is because those are the 2 laps when you first off start with all of them around you, and then you can begin to lap them on lap 5, and that makes the skip a lot riskier. But for these other laps, it's you're pretty much alone, which is nice. The AI is very bad at driving, and they will regularly crash into walls, and then their explosions can actually hurt you and by extension cause you to explode. So you kind of have to, you can't really trust them. So that's that whole race. I beat the course record according to the communicator, so congrats to me. And then here we are now going to pick up the final weapon in our arsenal, which is the Peacemaker. It's a very cool weapon casually. It's really fun. Super brutal. It's just like an area of effect electricity ball that you fire out of it. If anyone remembers playing this game, you probably remember the Peacemaker. You get the cool thing is that in Jak III you get to see all the same weapons, but they add on extra features and such as upgrades, which make a lot of the weapons more interesting. Like the Peacemaker, one of its upgrades is literally like a nuclear bomb. But anyways, here's a chain of reset warps that we do. Once I cross a certain line in the game, I'll know that my spawn point changes, and I'll do a mission reset, and we'll do that twice here. This area kind of looks funny the way we do it, and we actually get to do this section twice. Once I cross a certain line here, right there, I'll know I'm good. And to get to the Peacemaker, there's a little shortcut we can take, which hopefully I can get because it looks pretty funny. Just another example of jetboard walls being merely suggestions. Looks like that. We're going to hover across this gap. You can watch the map. You can see exactly what I'm skipping. Just a lot of movement on the side. As big of a skip as this looks, it only saves about 5 seconds. There's another more advanced way you can do that where you actually land inside the room that spawns there to save a second or two. But now we have the Peacemaker. We are fully equipped with every weapon, everything we need to do the speedrun for. In a speedrun context, the Peacemaker is actually rather unwieldy. It's a very slow weapon, low rate of fire. It does about twice as much as anything else, but the rate of fire is, you know, maybe even like 50% the speed of other weapons. That being said, there are a couple sections where some boss fights, they focus more on damage output as opposed to rate of fire, so it does become crucial to save time in a couple fights. This is the second race of 3. This one's rather unconventional compared to the other 2. You'll see that I'm actually in the city, and that's because this hotshot named Errol has challenged us to a race. In the story, he's sort of like the Baron's right-hand man. He's kind of living up the good life, being this like, he's like the coolest guy in the city. You know, he's talented on a zoomer. He's a high-ranking person in the military, and then you kind of are the same thing, but you're kind of like. People look up to you quite a bit, and he gets a little jealous, so he wants to show you up here. As you can see, he's not doing a very good job. He's very far behind. The gimmick of this race is that we are trying to hit all of these rings, which both give us boosts, and also they kind of if you fail to hit one and then you hit the next one, the mission auto ends. So you have to really make sure you snag all these rings. There's a route that we call ringless, which actually skips basically every ring after the plaza area. It's pretty inconsistent. It's really good for ILs, like if you're going for like a race time. I don't use it in runs personally. It only saves about, I think, 5 or 6 seconds, and for how inconsistent it is, it's not a big deal. This second part here, there's a lot of really tight spaces, just a lot of control of the zoomer. Overall, not so bad. Similarly, you can sub to this one as kind of an average good time for that. All the races kind of are about the same length, about 2 minutes. Here's similarly, because we're going to be making our way through the canal district, I'm just looking for a zoomer right away. And now we're going to go ahead and make our way to the lab which we entered previously. Coming up is going to be where there's a couple of route divergences depending on what you're comfortable doing. There's going to be a set of 3 missions that you can do in a variety of orders. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to be, before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a couple other missions we've got to do here. This is another mission. This mission is sort of an obstacle course, which we similarly break with the jet board. Luckily, there's a wall right before the end of the level that doesn't have any external collision. Oops, I hope I can make this. Okay, cool. So that wall doesn't have any external collision, so because of that, we can go ahead and just get to the end of the level. You'll notice I just kind of did a front flip into this a bit of a void there, and the reason I do that is because this hut is not spawned because we skipped the loading checkpoint, but the cutscene trigger luckily is still there, so if you just know where the trigger is, you're totally fine. You can still snag it. I'm gonna leave here without actually using the airlock, and the reason for that is because we're gonna do a trick called Ghost Town, which is nice because what it does is all the objects in the city, such as the vehicles, the pedestrians, are loaded when you're in that airlock. And by skipping that, we not only save the time from not having to wait inside of it, but it makes jetboarding a lot more convenient when you can just kind of freely go through it. And the benefit is twofold, because you both don't have to worry about any pedestrians, and the lag in the industrial district is fairly reduced, which makes it's quite the boon for the jetboard, because it's very susceptible to lag, the hover trick. And we're gonna go ahead and try to do a bit of a shortcut here. So this is funny. We're making our way to this hut just for more story stuff. I punched towards that ramp there because there's a load trigger that you do skip a tiny bit by doing that hover. But luckily the trigger's easy to access. It's just a few feet away. If I were to skip that though, this hut wouldn't be loaded, and neither would the cutscene trigger for it. So unfortunately, we're required to do it for the time being. A couple other uses of death abuse here coming up. We're going to be making our way towards the Haven Forest, which is kind of a lot of people's personal favorite area of the game. I think I would really say it's my favorite area as well. To do a couple more little missions here. Similar death abuse here. This one's funny. I don't really know. We don't really know why a lot of these respawn points change in the way they do, and why we can reach these respawn points from these certain areas, but they just seem to work out that way. So that just brings us right in front of this door. You'll see me use the R3 button to zoom in when I'm indoors or in airlocks, because the next door opens when the camera enters the room. So by forcing the camera into the room, you just open doors a lot faster. So there's a little bit of a downtime here. The mission coming up is we're going to be doing basically an escort mission. And or not an escort mission, I'm sorry, like a protect mission. There's going to be this gentleman named Samos who is meditating in the woods, and we're going to be protecting him. This mission is nice because we're going to take advantage of the fact that there's going to be a lot of guard spawns to go ahead and just farm ammo and get our inventory up to full, which is going to help us a lot for later in the run. That's mostly what this is for. Or not what it's for, but what we take advantage of in the run. So I'm going to try to not use as much ammo during the second part or during the next couple phases, because I want to save it so that I can just maximize ammo retrieval and replenishment. What our end goal really here is to max out our Peacemaker ammo specifically, and the reason for that is that we're going to rely on it for a fight coming up fairly soon. And the way the game prioritizes ammo drops is it kind of prioritizes it in an order, so that if you're low on one type of ammo, it'll give you that first and make sure that's full before it starts defaulting to other ammo drops. The order I think goes red gun, blue, yellow, and then purple being the Peacemaker. So we're going to want to make sure that these are full as fast as we can get them, so that it starts dropping those. That's 1, 2. Already gotten 2 here, that's good. That'll be 3. This mission to an extent is a little bit of an auto-scroller. It doesn't really go faster like you can only go so fast in this mission, and then it kind of starts defaulting to this like global timer that it follows. We've now maxed out Peacemaker. I'm probably going to be a little more lenient with using my yellow here to do away with them. The only part where the run, it really becomes dependent on how fast you finish it, is going to be the last couple there that die. I'm gonna wait here for another cutscene to occur, and then a little bit of downtime while the memory card saves. Here's another mission reset. This actually sends you right back to the teleporter. You can do this in either order. You can actually do a mission reset at the start here to take you to Samos instantly, or you can do it after the mission. It's preference. I like the movement going towards there, so I just do it after. I think they're more or less the exact same time. Maybe a difference by a second. Once we hit there, we skip another flag change, so just do a mission reset. There's going to be a second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's going to be a second ghost town here. This one looks a little funnier. The aesthetic model of the game is loaded, but then if we hover across and kind of position our hover there a little optimally, we can actually trigger the actual main area to load as we're falling. Oh, okay. I was trying to land out of bounds here. The hitbox for that little boiler thing is a little funny, so you can kind of collide with it sometimes. And that's really just to cut a corner here to talk to this gentleman named Brudder. And I got a little ahead of myself earlier. This is that portion of the run that I mentioned where there's a bit of a route divergence. We're going to do a thing here that we call mission storage. where I'm going to activate this mission where we have to rescue these lurkers. But I'm not going to do this mission quite yet, because luckily when you do missions that send you to kind of outskirt, you know, satellite regions of the game, it tends to not overwrite what your current settings are in the main city. So missions that are active here will kind of remain active, and we're going to use that to our benefit by traveling all the way over here to this laboratory and then completing these 2 missions, which after the fact we can exploit the fact that we're on an active mission to send us right back to it, which saves quite a bit of travel time. The reason this strat is a little spookier is the fact that if you take a single death in these 2 missions over here, that will overwrite the lurker mission on the overworld, rendering you unable to exploit the mission reset. And then that causes us to have to travel manually there, and we refer to that drive, if you were to hypothetically get it, as the drive of shame. My running joke is that I just like to call it the scenic route because it's just a lot of city movement. Here's a good example of game design in this kind of era, where the end of the level was kind of right at the beginning. The whole thing's a big loop. Because we have the luxury of flying through the air, that makes the level go pretty fast. We can go ahead and just hover right up to the cutscene trigger there. This mission is a rather spooky mission. There's a lot of platforming here and a lot of opportunities to fall and take a death. We also get to utilize the mech suit momentarily, which is a rather interesting and kind of infamous part of this game, in my opinion. It's probably the clunkiest aspect of this game's design. I think it's this mech suit. I always take an opportunity when I get it to kind of really praise this game. I think it's a really well-polished game in the majority of its aspects, and then I think some of that polish seems to be wanting with the use of the mech suit. It's a rather clunky mechanic, but it is what it is. That was rather spooky. I'm going to play this rather safe. I'd rather not fall off. I'd rather waste a couple seconds, a little unoptimal, in the name of preventing a death here. You notice that I did this out of bounds trick to skip the first part of this platforming. Yeah, some of these things are so like ingrained in me that I forget to bring them up before they happen. So as I'm talking, people are like, wait, let's backpedal here and talk about what you just did. So what that was there's an invisible wall there that actually doesn't end all the way down that slope, so we can just go ahead and just reach the end of it and then bypass it. You think why do we go back in bounds? And the reason for that is because we actually can't access that area with the Titan suit. We have the luxury of being able to reach that other part by just simply falling and using our thrusters. But everything else is just a bit too far away. We can't really reach it. This terminal room is a little spooky. We're gonna try to manipulate these metalheads to the best of our abilities. We're going to be, because as you can see there's a bit of like aimbotting that the mech suit will do to I guess in this case kind of help you with the combat, make it go smoother when your intent is to kill the metalheads. But in this context, it really slows us down. We want to avoid the metalheads so we can go ahead and just destroy the terminals as fast as we can. When they're too close to us, that is an issue because he'll actually dodge the terminals and go right for the metalheads. This is a rather cool jetboarding phase of the run. We're going to be kind of backtracking through this obstacles course now with all these big traps and stuff active, and we are going to and we're now on a timer too. This portion is a little scary because a lot can go wrong here, and bear in mind we're still on that no death kind of stipulation to this this route, so that area can be a little nerve-wracking if you're on a fairly good pace. I'm gonna go for a little cutscene skip here. You didn't quite get it. You can actually skip this communicator if you skip that cutscene at the right time. Some other language settings actually make that trick a lot easier. On English, which I decided to use here, it seems that the window of opportunity for that trick is actually a little smaller, so it's harder to get. Usually when I do PB attempts, I'll be on the Japanese language, because on that one, the setup is rather simple, and the timing window is pretty quick, or is pretty wide, I would say. So then, now as you can see, I just went ahead and did that mission reset, which took us all the way back there, and we will now begin the lurker mission here. And this is an interesting mission. If you remember these lurkers from the first game, they're kind of actually the main enemy of the first one. But in this one, they're actually fairly endangered, and they're being exploited by the Crimson Guards, being the kind of soldiers, and being swept up and put in cages and all that. And some of the lurkers who at this stage have become, gained a fair amount of intelligence, like Brother. He can speak and communicate, and he's trying to help his brothers, who may be a little less quite like that. They've fallen prey to the Crimson Guards. We luckily don't have to pick up every single lurker. Optimally, if you can kill them kind of the way I did and get a little bit of a damage boost, you can put them right next to these vents where they have to go, and they'll aggro the vent instead of you and just kind of beeline it for it. And once you know that they see it and they're going for it, you don't have to worry about them anymore. It's worth noting that the cycles for these pairs, that there's going to be three pairs of cars. The cycles only begin once the area loads. If you were to go out of bounds and kind of debug your way or do whatever you want to do to reach these other areas, you'll see that the cars are spawned, but they're not moving. They're simply positioned there waiting for you to spawn the area, and then they'll kind of start driving. I got really good luck there. Both damage boosts occurred there, which is nice. That saves 4 or 5 seconds alone of just having to wait for them to aggro on the vent. This next part is a little interesting. We're going to manipulate the way that these move, because we want to prevent any chance of these lurkers falling into these canals. The reason for that being is that if they fall in the water, there's no opportunity to actually save them. The mission auto fails, so we make sure that one's in the corner before we actually deal damage to it. That way he consistently gets boosted into the corner. I'm going a little slower here intentionally, not too slow though, because I want that lurker car to spawn that direction, and kind of already be over here by the time I reach this area. Let's see, I think he's aggroed on it. Yeah, he's fine. For that reason, because he'll be over there by the time we reach there, and it's just a little faster. And it's funny because if you reach there a little too quick, he'll be farther back around that back corner, and you'll be spawning, vehicles in that area as you enter that region. And sometimes you'll spawn so many around the car that he'll get a bit snagged, and you won't be able to get him to the vent. You'll have to manipulate him and push him out of the way, or kind of fish him through these cars, which is terrible. So that's the other reason I go slower there, to make sure he's already moved a bit before cars start spawning everywhere in these, kind of high congested regions. This is going to be the last race. It's rather simple. It's not there's not a lot going on in this one. Very low risk skips and jumps. The most interesting aspect of this one is I'm going to try to optimize my boosts here by trying to snag 2 at once. There's a couple opportunities to get double boosts if you turn your car in such a way where the hitboxes can reach both at once. I actually got it on the first lap, which is pretty cool. It's not a big deal if you don't get it. I think it maybe saves a third or half a second per boost. But you want to try to get as many as you can, and of course not miss boosts as I just did. I believe it's possible to get a double boost on that other pair. I do it occasionally. Although you have to be moving rather slow and your angle on that turn has to be kind of weird, so I don't even know if it's optimal per se to get a double boost there. Maybe it even breaks even at best. You lose nothing from going for the double boost in the first one, which is why it's really desirable. You don't want to fall in these canals. You want to be able to really make sure you're managing your acceleration, your speed, to make sure that the turns here are, you know, sharp enough. Something I never actually touched on is that you'll hear me doing little hops like this. I'll be quiet for a sec so you can hear it. And the reason I'm doing that is because when you actually turn to the side, the hopping shoves you in that direction a little more. So that actually creates the opportunity to take really sharp turns, which is nice because then you don't actually have to decelerate nearly as much. I'm going to try to get on the inside of this guy. Lap 5 of this mission is it can be a little spooky. You start to lap all the other NPCs, they crowd you around, and they can really bombard you. As you saw in the first lap, they were pretty brutal to me. So that's that. This next part is going to be... This next part's a little scary. You start without a zoomer, and you're completely vulnerable to these Crimson Guards, and I really just want to hop in a zoomer as fast as I can, which, look, I got one parked there. You can do a little trick there to access this faster. When you have that text on the bottom of the screen, it's a problem for interacting with items and cars, because without the actual prompts to access the vehicle, it restricts you completely from entering it. And you can't have that prompt up when there's other text. So by momentarily hitting select and then unpausing, the other on-screen text gets lower priority, and it actually shows you for a second the mount vehicle prompt. So if you just quickly tap select and then mount the vehicle, you're good to go. Here is our, you know, yet again, that chain of... Here's that chain of reset warps that we relied on last time. Going to be doing exactly the same thing, except this time once we reach the plaza. Also, let's see if I can get the sick grind. Nah, I missed the sick grind. That's tragic. Anyways, we're going to be going forward here. We're going to be accessing Baron's Palace. When you complete that third race, you get a security pass to enter the fortress here. We'll go ahead and kind of encounter the Baron momentarily and just develop the plot further, kind of raising the stakes here. This part's funny because yet again, you actually enter the same elevator that you ride up to end this mission. And luckily we can just hover over the wall and access it immediately, like that. Hoverless, you'd have to take this big old loop, and that's one of the longest missions, different, like, compared to hoverless and not hoverless. And now we're also similarly going to access the zoomer here. We get to make our way to the port here, really for the first time. You see it momentarily when you get the Peacemaker, but this is the port. And we're going to take a carrier over to this weapons factory. This is going to be probably the most precise and longest hover of the game. It's pretty spooky, it's very precise. We're going to try to cross a checkpoint and then load this entire level and hover all the way to the end, which means you have to be fairly accurate. Let's see if we can snag this. I didn't get the first one. That's rather unfortunate, but let's see if I can just go ahead and do a safer setup here. So you'll see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to cross this checkpoint and then hover through these rooms in a specific order. So I'm going to see a blue room, a red room, and then yet another blue room. And this blue room is going to be the last one. This is a funny death warp that we do, where we're going to go up here to kind of load a death plane. And then from there, we're going to access that death plane while near an elevator over here. And what that does is that actually changes our spawn point to be the top of the elevator. very bizarre trick. Not really sure how that was discovered, but it's pretty funny. This way, we don't actually have to fight all those robots that you saw rolling around, and we just can go ahead and access the top of the elevator right away. Because of the setup that's required for it, which is rather kind of a complicated setup, it doesn't save as much time as you think. You don't lose too much time from skipping it. You can still get incredible times without it. But it is sort of nice little optimizer. And it's rather fun to do. It's just kind of such a wacky trick, and one of those kind of crowd pleasers. This is the crew fight, which is, this gentleman actually has been employing us as, you know, theoretically part of the rebellion. But then, and as a background, he's an arms dealer. But as you probably could guess, being an arms dealer, he's very business-oriented and tends to work with whoever can kind of cut him a really big paycheck, specifically the Baron. So we've discovered he's been working with the Baron. He's been supplying them with the weapons that they're using to both terrorize the city and to, thwart Jak. And that's very uncool. So we're gonna fight him here and kind of beat up his little flubber-like minions. And as you can see, this is where the Peacemaker comes into play. His iframes are so long that you don't really, there's not really a disadvantage to just utilizing that gun to capitalize on its double damage compared to all the other weapons. I'm trying to keep all these flubber-like creatures close to this edge so I can do what you see I've been doing. As they spawn, I just knock them over the edge, and that requires only one bullet as opposed to two. Yeah, and managing these can be a little tricky. They can get stuck on stuff all the time, and they regularly do, and you want them to do that as little as possible, because, that way you just actually end up having to follow them around, and it's rather annoying. Oh, I forgot. He has 8 health here. That was kind of dopey. Just use. So that's the crew fight. Coming up is we're kind of on the tail end of the run here. It's kind of the home stretch. This is going to be, this is a very high octane part of the run. I hope everyone's ready for this, because we're going to before we can get kind of the home stretch, we have a bit of a challenge here, a test of our aptitude and savviness for this run. What we're gonna do is we're going to play whack-a-mole. So, yeah. How's everyone's day going? This part is completely scripted. No randomness except for where they spawn. Each phase has the same things. So you really just gotta play the game. It's like the exact same time every time. You just don't want to hit reds. Of course, yeah, great time. This, as the port loads in that room, that tends to be one of the more, I guess, intensive parts of the game in terms of processing, because it regularly crashes there. So you want to be really careful with that load. here is the underport mission. We're actually going to be accessing a secret kind of precursor area under the port, but we are going to be doing a pretty massive and interesting sequence break here by tricking the game into loading the bottom area without you actually having to access it in the way that you traditionally would. What you can see here is that this area is supposed to be like an underwater level theoretically, but when you load it in such a way, the water doesn't spawn, but the... Where am I? The water doesn't spawn, so we can actually just jetboard all the way to the end of that portion and then bypass the entire Titan suit area. And now we're at the SIG escort part. That part can be rather scary when you're doing runs, because if you miss that one hover, that's rather crucial. You can't reset it. You actually just have to redo the entire trick, which loses you about 20 seconds. So with all the hovers, you really got to rely on is that one. Then just some modest puzzle solving. There's a couple of these little puzzles. Once you know the way to do it, you just gotta, go ahead and solve it. This part, you gotta be really careful and count your shots, because if you push that block all the way up against the wall, you can't move it back out with knowledge. And you just literally have to wait for it to blow up.
And I don't want to die.
Damage it, it's on a timer, so it's kind of hilarious. You can guess I've lost runs in just about every way you can in this game, and that's one of them. And it's such a defeating way to lose a run, because you don't. It's not like you die. It's not spectacular. You just literally stand there and watch a box explode, and just realize that it's all over. So then this is the end part. Sadly, Sig fell prey to the metalpede there, and he fell in that pit, never to be seen again. Wink wink. Also, look, the ceiling isn't loaded yet. It'll load the moment we reach the top here, which is funny. And there it is. I always like showing that off. But yeah, poor Sig. So here's kind of the final part of this run. We are just going to be making our way. I'm going to snag this Crimson Guard Zoomer. Just making our way over to the stadium, where Kira, who's kind of the inventor of the gang, has crafted this, or she's retrofitted this kind of vehicle, like this time-traveling vehicle, to reopen this precursor gate in the metalhead nest, essentially. But in order to get it there, she has it at her laboratory in the stadium, and we need to mount it onto this this blimp of sorts to take it to the metalhead hideout. The way we can do that is we get the two oracles, the Samoses, to escort it across the way onto the balloon, which I've always had this little bit of this comment regarding this, is I think what required the blimp to be positioned on the clear other side of the stadium rather than right next to it. But I'll go ahead and assume there's a logical reason for that. There's a lot of lag in this area. You'll notice that if you look at the mini-map, you'll see red dot after red dot. Those are all actually all actively loaded, NPCs that are occurring, which is really cool, because it's a testament to just how crazy they Naughty Dog pushed the PS2 at the time to really create this immersive world. That being said, that also makes that area also a little infamous for rather putting quite a bit of pressure on the console, and can actually cause it to crash. You can get infinite jumps off the bottom of this, which is funny. So I always try to drive a little slower than necessary there. So as you can see, this is the portion where we're moving the teleporter across the way. All the while we are fending off these metalhead spawns, which luckily are a tad scripted to an extent. You can predict when and where almost they're going to be. So I'm going to be really just standing here. I'm spinning, trying to be conservative with ammo while also just making sure the Samoses are safe. That was actually fairly good. I don't think I got a single hit on the Samoses yet. I can't speak too soon, but I think this is going to be a no-hits Samos here, which is nice. My average is probably 1 or 2 hits, just because sometimes you really can't do anything about it. They just kind of really get all up in the mix there. So far, so good. They're just going to be positioning it down there. The moment it lands and kind of really fixates itself onto that platform, the mission will end. We'll see a cutscene, and we'll be good to go. Cool, no hit Samos. So, cool. This is, we're just going to make our way to the construction site here, where the Baron is finalizing his plans to weaponize his big, big old bomb or whatever he's doing, and which is going to be quite destructive. We want to go ahead and put a stop to this. We know where he is, and we know it's going down. If you remember this gentleman, right at the start of the game that we saw for like a half second after escape, is this guy with white hair. He's a dude. He's sort of the an ally to the rebels. I only bring him up. Maybe it's a little early to bring him up, but just keep that in your mind. This portion is just the last little driving phase. You want to be careful, because at this point in the level, the city is overrun by metalheads, and there's actually cloaked metalheads, which you can't see until you hit them. So you want to be careful and try to be on the lower hover zone as long as you can, or as little as you can. Something that's interesting to comment on about this construction site is that you simply visit this area once in the whole game, only to watch a single cutscene, and then you leave it immediately. And I think if you really look at the detail and the level of detail into the design of this area, it's pretty lush with stuff, and it gives you the idea that maybe it was meant to be a more actively utilized satellite region with missions and stuff, but simply due to the constraints of the design and the sheer size of the game already, it was kind of put on the wayside. Of course, this game is hardly lacking in content, so it's very understandable. That it turns out that white-haired dude that we saw is actually the leader of the metalheads. He's actually called Metalcore, and you see him there. He actually reveals himself, and then the Baron sadly meets an untimely end at the hand of Metalcore. You sort of see a more human side of the Baron there. It's kind of like a humanizing moment for him. Now we just have to make our way to Metalcore ourselves, and go ahead and do what has to be done now that we find out about the Metalhead's plans. We're just gonna go ahead and finish him off. Do a mission reset there just to reach the carrier, and then this is going to be one of the last hovers. This area can be a little nerve-wracking in terms of hovers, just the last few sequence breaks, and this area is also susceptible to quite a bit of lag because of the lightning, which you can actually see visibly causes lag. These are simply, there's like a large obstacle course that you can access, or that you have to casually take to get to the Metalhead nest. We kind of just bypass the majority of it. And here's the Metalcore fight, which is the last fight of the game. Time's going to be coming up at the end on the last hit of the third phase here. The first two phases go rather fast. As you can see, I exploit that aforementioned kind of rather accelerated rate of fire here to just kind of do away with them rather quick. Once we watch that cutscene. This fight looks about the same every time you do it. If you do it the same every time. I'm really manipulating his movement here and making sure that he does the exact same thing. I want him to walk backwards and stagger at certain moments so that I can conveniently arrive at these ammo refills when I need to get them. So time's coming up right now. And time. So that is Jak II. I hope I did a good job on showing that off. Of course, the run wasn't perfect. I got all the majority of the stuff that both looks cool and is kind of, you know, more key to the speed of the run. A 103, not bad. Wow, that was actually only 7 seconds off of my SGDQ time. I'll gladly take that. Especially considering you lose a bit of time to the save times, you know, the delay. Well, okay, so hope that was entertaining. I love this game. I love talking about this game. And this marathon's really cool. I'm really happy that I was able to kick it off and, you know, get a bit of an interview with Poke Hero. Thanks everyone for the GGs. Yeah, be sure to keep up with this marathon. Super cool, good cause. Happy to be a part of it. Happy to have a, you know, majority of the Jak community, a bunch of folks in the chat. Really cool community. A lot of support. Our Discord is, you know, as active as ever. Happy to have new runners all the time answering questions. So if you're ever curious, just go ahead and drop us a line. Yeah, we killed Metalcore. We turn on the portal and we can go ahead and go back in time now. This is where the time travel element of this plot is a little convoluted, but when is it not? When you incorporate time travel. As much as I pick on this game with little things, it's fantastic. I love this game. It's the only reason I can pick on it so much.
It's funny. The boy won't remember any of this.
Oh yeah, it turns out that little kid is actually Jak. He's baby Jak, and we send him back in time to grow up and be Jak I. So that's a little interesting. And now we're all partying it up. I'm going to showcase a hardlock here, and a very consistent hardlock, just in the spirit of this run, if I have an opportunity. I don't know how long I have, but I think I have a couple minutes here. Just kind of a tradition with, you know, no resets and races. You just kind of, once you see Daxter in this bar called the Naughty Otso, I'm gonna do a mission, a cutscene skip, and then hopefully I'll get the results I want.
Not likely.
So that's a consistent crash. For whatever reason, the screen will now remain a black screen. Pretty funny. Anyways, so yeah, that's it for me. Got really nothing else to show off. Yeah.
That was a fantastic run.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was really happy with that. That was fun. So
Just